What are we doing with crowded backfields? Committee backfields. The NFL is going to running back by committee. Everybody wants a bell cow. Just doesn't really exist anymore. Let me give you some examples of crowded backfields just so you can kind of gauge what we're talking about here. You got San Francisco, New England, Miami, Houston, Seattle, to an extent. You have Atlanta as well. These are just crowded backfields. Guys, we really don't know what to do. There's going to be points in your drafts, your startup drafts, where you're staring down the barrel of a committee backfield running back. And what do you do? It's a concern because do you go here? Do you go wide receiver? Do you go tight end? So we just kind of broke it up a little bit, just some different topics on the subject. So what is the first thing you look at when dissecting a crowded backfield? Is it opportunity, ability as a receiving back? Is it the scheme?
Yeah, so for me, when it comes to this sort of thing, the most important thing when I'm looking at backfields like this is definitely the setup of the league I'm in and the scoring settings. If you're in a first down point per first down league, that's important to know. If it's point per full PPR, then you're adding another half point down. You're obviously looking at those 3 down guys. The later it gets, like points per carry leagues are now a thing. So obviously that for me is a big deal. And knowing who to go, because if you're talking about those advantages and bonuses, then that's what I want to look at. More importantly than that, though, I feel like scheme has to be the most important thing. We just touched on one of the backfields there before in terms of Miami. We look at what Mike McDaniels did, obviously out in San Fran. You know he's going to run that zone. Guy like Chase Edmonds I thought he would have fallen a lot sooner in drafts, especially best ball startups. He's a guy that's floated back, but I don't see another guy in that team. I really don't think there's anyone there that could really take that away from him. Sony Michel maybe on short yard work, but you're looking at scheme and you're looking at committees. I think you can get a guy like Chase Edmonds 8th round, 9th round, 10th round, and I don't think there's anyone really on his roster that can really challenge him for at least terms of quality and how good he can be used in all facets of the game.
All right, and also, you know what, this applies to everything. Always know your league settings because you've seen in drafts – people are drafting. Is this tight end premium? Oh, this is super flex. I didn't know. It's like, guys and girls, take a couple minutes, look at your league settings, look at your roster settings, because there's nothing more frustrating than to commissioners and everybody else in your league than someone be like, well, I didn't know.
I think the biggest thing for me when I'm looking at these backfields, especially the list that you made up, which is a really good list of crowded backfields, the way the NFL is moving, and the NFL is moving towards a majority of crowded backfields, because we've seen what they've done to a majority of the high talented receivers with no help behind them. They've been getting killed. Prime example is Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was 25 years old and nobody was touching him in drafts at all because his knees are shot. He can barely walk on a regular day. And in general, is just talent per se. So if we look at, for example, we all know Rashad Penny, he's always been hurt, and Chris Carson's hurt a lot as well. I think in that point, the cream will rise to the top with the Kenneth Walker in that aspect. So I'll try to, wait a little bit longer and probably get like a Kenneth Walker in that case. I know a lot of people are really high on a Rashad Penny this year because of what he did at the end of the year. But the history shows that the man cannot stay healthy. Do you want to go with somebody that's going to be a risky or a safe pick in a Kenneth Walker? In that case, I want the talent in a Kenneth Walker than a Rashad Penny at that point. And the scheme is a big thing as well. You just have to see how the running backs is going to fit in that scheme as well. So if you're going to get a San Francisco running back, one of them guys are going to hit. You're just not really sure because everybody thought it was going to be a Trey Sermon, and it wound up being an Elijah Mitchell, who was supremely talented as well, who we scouted and we were fans of at that point. So, you just got to, focus on the talent.
Yeah, for me, it's all about opportunity. To be perfectly honest with you, it's obviously scheme's important, scoring is important, and I know you have receiving backs, you have your guys, your first and second down hammers, but I want to know who's going to get the most touches. Like, there's going to be times where, take for example in 2019, you had a crowded backfield in Philadelphia, Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard. Miles Sanders turned out to be the better back. Jordan Howard did get hurt, but Jordan Howard was great on first and second down. Miles Sanders was getting a lot of receiving work. I think Buffalo could actually be put on this list as well. I know everybody is like, oh, who should I draft at the 110? Should I draft James Cook for the millionth time? Please don't do that. Devin Singletary is still the running back I want in Buffalo. to be honest with you. I think he's going to get the most receiving yards. I think he's going to get more rushing work than people think. There's probably going to be backfields that I'll just stay away from because I really don't know. When it's okay to say, when someone's like this guy or this guy, it's okay to be like, neither. Find someone else. I'm probably doing that with New England, and in Atlanta, I'm probably just going to stay away from Atlanta, to be honest with you. Do we stay away from backfields like this? Would you pivot to another position, or are you going to take chances when the value is right, when the ADP is good? So, Pork, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, so I usually stay away from backfields like this because from week to week, you really don't know what you're going to do dealing with those third down type of satellite backs. And I'm not really sure. So I think at this point, like I said before, the way the league is moving forward, it's starting to become the wave with the RBBC. So you might have to, take a few guys that can get you those PPR points, like Dan said. You just got to know your league if you're going to get points per first down or the regular PPR points per reception. You might have to take some of them guys and put them on your bench on your long bench or Dynasty, just in case of injury and whatnot. So you can just plug and play. It's good to have on your bench just in case of injury and such and such.
Yeah, again, I think I'm more indifferent on the situation because it has to be when the value becomes correct. Like I've mentioned it before. I think you look to 2 years ago, I've said it. Austin Eckler was in a committee with Melvin Gordon, and then a year later, he's the RB3, and that's where he's going at now, right? You could look at it to a year ago where Zach Moss was the number one running back in Buffalo. Was he an RB1 or something, right? That's what I remember.
And, I believe he was the RB1 overall.
He was the RB1 overall, right? And, that's where he began, and then obviously Singletary takes over, right? Now he's looking at a 10, 12, 13 touches a game. The value has to be right for that to happen because if you were someone that picked up a guy like Devin Singletary in the 12th, 13th round in what was a formidable committee, if you throw in Josh Allen, then you've probably got yourself a bargain on your hands with people not knowing what to do in a situation like that. So I think it all depends on where the value falls. Like you could argue that a guy like Zeke Elliott's now in a 1-2 committee, right, with Tony Pollard, and it just depends on where the value falls. You could also say a year ago that a guy like Ronald Jones was the first running back taken in Tampa before Leonard Fernett, prior to about a month before the season started. So if you're doing all these startup drafts, Ronald Jones was going before a guy like Leonard Fernett. How'd that work out? So, it just depends on where these guys fall. And obviously, Gio was there too. So, and Keyshawn Vaughn. So, that was a committee in Tampa that ended up working out okay if you're someone that ended up taking a guy like Leonard Fernett because his value fell. I don't necessarily stay away from it. Obviously, it depends on how your draft is panned out at the beginning. And then you can go from there and evaluate, okay, well, look, it's a 26-year-old running back. He might be a shot. Maybe I'll get 1 or 2 years and I can flip and bring in something else later. So I'm indifferent. It just depends on the situation and circumstances and how they arrive at your doorstep.
We're always looking for that bell cow back. And I think that's just something that's ingrained in our psyche when we're drafting or when we're assembling a team is we want that guy that we think is going to be a starter. You want to fill your starting lineup with as many starting players as you can. The NFL is leaning more towards running back by committee. So I'm building my teams more wide receiver centric for that reason. And this is a situation where sometimes it's like you're building a team and you do a punt year one, or you do a productive struggle right off the bat, and you fill your roster out loaded with younger but unproven wide receivers. You take some running back by committee or committee backs, and then you draft running backs in the future, guys that you think are going to be studs. Maybe last year you would have swooped in and got a Najee, and this year you tank again and you got a Breece Hall. That's one of those things. But if the ADP is right and I could fill a hole in my team, I need a running back and I think he's good and he's better than anybody else that I like in that area, be it at any other position, completely fine taking it. I've been talking about Devin Singletary for a long time. He's a guy that I'd look at as well. So let's go to the next one. When's the best time to draft a player like this? Startup or rookie draft? I think the rookie draft is when we always feel like guys are in a committee because they're the new guy coming in. And we always like to say, your Breece Hall comes in, well, Michael Carter's still going to get work. Dameon Pierce comes in. We still have Rex Burkhead and Marlon Mack. So maybe their value's a little bit lesser.
It's the right answer. I told you I'm indifferent. The right answer for me is both. Like we mentioned the Atlanta backfield before in Tyler Algier. I actually love the landing spot for him and where he fell in rookie drafts and where he fell in the NFL draft. And you're looking at a guy like, Cordarrelle Patterson or he's 10 to 11 carries a game. Like that's meant to be a threat, or old chalk bones Damian Williams. Like that's not really going to be a threat to me in regards to what Algier can actually do. He's light on the touches because obviously, what was he, a linebacker before or something, right? And a guy like that can walk into a team where Arthur Smith just wants to flog the ball on the ground because Marcus Mariota might not be a very good quarterback. So we're looking at like, okay, if he falls to the mid-late second, like to me, even if it looks like a committee, I have no problem taking him there. Whereas others that might float in and around, it might be a bit more touch and go. But with startup, you're going to get like premium value. If you did a startup and you took Melvin Gordon this year and he goes back to Denver and he still gets 45% of the touches and the receiving work, you're laughing. Like what, for an extra year or two, and you're going to get like RB2 production out of him no matter what. So you're going to find value when those guys fall. Again, I'll go back to it. A year ago with Leonard Fournette, he fell late in startups last year, and he was the RB5 again. So for me, I find that value is the best time to get these veterans who are in committees. James Conner a year ago, when he goes to Arizona, no one wanted to touch him, and here he is punching out 17, 18 touchdowns in a season or whatever it was. So, that's the value that you're going to find in these guys in their mid to late 20s that are going to get you that value, and they're going to get you fantasy points while you stock up on those receivers and tight ends going forward.
Dan, I think you're making a good point here too. You've made it twice now. Austin Eckler and James Conner, because they're in a committee, doesn't mean they're always going to be. That's a great point. Austin Eckler finished the season, I don't think it was last year, but the year before, running back 3 or 4. James Conner looks like, everybody's really bullish on him as well. Most people are. Some aren't. Yeah. So it's a good point that right there, these guys are in a committee, not now, but not always.
For rookie drafts in particular, I would take them, quite at value. I'm not going to totally reach on unless I really need one, like a Rashad White that I would like in Tampa. Now that Ronald Jones isn't there, Leonard Fernett apparently came to camp at 260 pounds. So
don't buy it.
I'm not too sure how that's going to work out with the coaches. You're talking about Spiller, for instance, Isaiah Spiller with Eckler. It's kind of like the reverse thing with the Eckler and Melvin Gordon. If something happens with Eckler, I want a Spiller too. But when it comes to a startup without rookies in it, I'm probably going to wait a little bit longer. Unless I have if I draft Ezekiel Elliott, I would probably get like a Tony Pollard just to get the super handcuff. And other than that, I'm not trying to clog up my roster too early with that. But if it becomes value later on, and I see guys like that dropping down, I'll definitely take a committee back and just see what happens, because you never know due to injury, or we'll see something in training camp. You can use those training camp news, those sleeper things, and use that for trade bait for the next year if you're rebuilding on a team like that, and you can get some picks for your rookie drafts.
So for me, it really depends on your team makeup. How's the team going? What do you need? Obviously, every team looks different as you're assembling it, but I always found the cheapest you can get a running back, typically in the rookie draft. Would we consider trading for running backs in a crowded running back room? Do they make sense if you're either contending or rebuilding?
For me, it's a no. I don't. If you're trying to, buy a pick if I'm trying to contend, I don't want to give up my future picks for a running back by committee back. That's not going to really give you the value that you're going to get for a younger back in the future. In that case, if I'm rebuilding and I'm trying to gain picks with it, then I might do so, just to help my team out for the future. But yeah, I don't want to pretty much waste value on guys that's not going to have 100% of opportunity. I'm probably mostly just trading picks like that for bell cow backs if they're still available. But I don't want to waste my value on trying to get running back by committee back.
I'm not necessarily against it. You've just got to pick your spot. So for me, we look at like running backs. Obviously, running backs don't matter, right? So like we're looking at running backs that don't get second contracts, that get cut, and you're looking at guys that are getting there. They might be RB2 or 3 on their depth chart, and you can sit there and go, well, we can say Damian Harris in New England's probably not going to get a contract in New England, right? We know how they do things. Ramondre Stevenson's probably going to take over at the end of the season, and he's probably going to get some work now, and you're going to get another 2 years out of him. So as long as you're not overexerting on what you're going to give away, I don't see a massive problem in it, because running backs in the second round, third round of your rookie draft, they're as big of a gamble as it is anyway. So you're either going to overpay for a guy like, hypothetically, Stevenson in a year's time, or you could get him on the cheap now for like a third or whatever it may be. You could even go further. You could say, like, Chicago's a team that's cash strapped, right? David Montgomery's probably not going to get paid there. Khalil Herbert, I know he's a favorite of the show. Old Zachy boy, how you going? I know that a guy like Khalil Herbert is a guy that, like, could take over from David Montgomery at the end of the year. That's a potential. You can get him. He's going to be in a committee at some point, right? So there's guys like that you can get if you target them correctly that could contribute in a year's time. So I don't necessarily have a problem going after running backs that are in a committee. You just have to pick your spot with who and when. If you're going to aim for one of these RB2s on a depth chart, just time your run. That's it, because 6-8 months time, it's too late. It's over. Like, so just time your run with that. But be patient.